Welcome to the second episode of Inclusion Nugget Series. I'm your host, Harsh, and today we are joined by one of Freeling's subject matter expert, John. He has worked extensively for the past 3 decades on social justice in over 20 countries. Some of the organizations which he has worked with include UNICEF, UN Volunteers, BSO International, Skillshare International, UNDP, amongst others. Welcome, John.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
So Feb 20th is observed as World Day for Social Justice. And today, as we sit on Feb 20th, how do you think that organizations can create a just workplace?
I think it's really exciting that there is a day now called the World Day for Social Justice. And it's something for all of us. For workplaces, for organizations, I think fundamentally they need to put issues of inclusion, equity, and justice at the heart of everything they do. It's not an add-on, it's not an extra, it's not a nice thing. It's actually fundamental to developing a smooth running and effective and efficient organization that, you know, has harmony amongst its workforce, but also is focused on its goal. And you know, it should and must be at the heart of everything, whether it's private sector, whether it's government, whether it's development sector, or higher education, or wherever.
These days, organizations have started having an increased conversation on power and privilege and its interplay in creating just, equitable workplaces, right? So what exactly is power and privilege, and how does it impact workplace?
Okay, yeah, I mean, those conversations are happening more, at least in some organizations. Many it's still not, unfortunately. If we look at power, I mean, power is one of those indefinable things in some ways, but actually, you know, it's about something that we all have within all of us. On an individual level, but it's something that people can also have on a collective level, you know, as an organization, as a particular social group. It's not in itself a bad thing, but as we well know, it can be used in a very negative way to lead to discrimination, to lead to different forms of oppression. And I think privilege, the way I understand it, it's something that it flows from that power. It's often something that's inherited, that you know, somebody will pick up simply because of being born who they were, who they are, and it's something that you can gain through different activities or through maybe a position you're in. It's something that people experience differently. You can be powerful in one situation and far less powerful in another situation, yet you're still the same person. Yeah.
The point which you brought up was that, you know, that privilege essentially comes, a lot of times it does come from in what social group you were born with, right? Mm-hmm. And the moment we start having the conversation on privilege, we need to talk about intersectionality, because we all have so many layers to us, right? So why is it important, do you think, that to have a conversation on intersectionality and understand it better?
Okay, because as you rightly say, you know, we're dynamic people, you know, we have multiple identities, you know, so you can't simply define John as a man or as a white person or from a particular social class. You know, all of that and a lot more makes John who John is, you know. And that's true of everybody, you know. So once we do start seeing people in a very narrow lens, where we define people by their race or their gender, you know, or any other factor, then we're actually limiting that person, and we're limiting ourselves as well. So, you know, in a workplace, this can be a problem, because people will put statistics together. For example, you know, how many men are working here, how many women are working here. how many people from a particular ethnic group are here or a particular religion. And that's fine, because it's important to have that kind of information. However, there's a lot more depth to everybody than that, so you can treat somebody very well due to their gender, but at the same time being oppressive to them in terms of their religion, their sexual orientation, their social class, etc. So we need to see the whole person, rather than just one kind of one particular facet of them.
Yeah, very interesting, John. As I understand that all of us are privileged in certain situations, and all of us do not have that kind of privilege compared to other people in different situations. So what can a privileged group do to support a disadvantaged group within the organization?
Thank you. Yeah, a really good question. And, I want to give a few practical examples of things that privileged groups have been able to do to show their allyship, to show their solidarity. I guess the first step is having some awareness and understanding. I use myself as an example. I have a lot of privilege there, being white, coming from UK, now living in East Africa, being male, and yet that carries I don't know if it's a responsibility or what you call it, but actually I need to have an awareness of what that means. I can't just stop at saying, yeah, I'm John and I'm a nice person and I try and be good to people. That's fine, but it needs to go a lot more deeply than that. So just to give a couple of interesting examples, I think one that we've seen is the Black Lives Matter movement in the last couple of years. Although it's been going for more than 10 years, it kind of came to a lot of prominence the year before last because of the murder of George Floyd, and it just kind of captured a moment. Now, actually, that was not quite global, but the anti-racist protests kind of struck a chord in many countries. And what you did see was large numbers of, at least in the West, you saw large numbers of white people getting involved in anti-racism, and yet not claiming leadership, because this is what happens. A powerful group will eventually take over. So, black people in Britain and in US were saying we want leadership, but we also want white people to stand with us in solidarity. And I think that made it have a lot more impact because, actually there was a sense of people standing together. There's another organization which is called Peace Brigades International. They have a very interesting concept of accompanyship, I think that's the right word, where they work with human rights defenders in a lot of countries, particularly in Latin America, but a few in Asia and Africa as well. And one of the things they do is they have volunteers from various countries who actually go and just accompany and be with those human rights defenders, especially those people who are in very dangerous and threatening situations. And because of that internationalism, they've found that can be a protection for those human rights defenders, just simply literally being with them and moving around with them, which is a very interesting approach, very practical. And similarly, in South Africa, under apartheid, it's well documented that a lot of religious leaders, both Christians and Muslims, were at the forefront of a lot of the anti-apartheid struggle. And what they would intentionally do when there was a demonstration or a march, which they knew was life-threatening in many cases because the police would often be shooting at them or at least arresting them, they would actually put those religious leaders at the front of their marches.
Yeah.
The concept being that maybe the police will be a bit more reluctant to shoot at religious leaders. I mean, they still did, and they still arrested them. But to me, that was a sense of those religious leaders having a sense of responsibility, but also using their power and their privilege in a positive way, to show solidarity with people. And I think my last example is is still from South Africa, and it's a quote from one of those religious leaders, Desmond Tutu, who actually said, if you're neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor.
Yeah.
If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you're neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality.
Yeah.
So to me, that's one of the most powerful statements, because it's challenging all of us to not just, say, well, that doesn't concern me, that doesn't affect me, let me walk on by, but actually to say, if you have some power, use it wisely, use it positively to support people who are experiencing oppression.
Yeah. Very interesting, John. In fact, I came across this really nice African proverb, which says that, to really understand the story of a true hunt, you need to have the conversation with the lion.
Yeah.
And, it just sums it up that, hey, because many a times we are having the conversation with the people who are actually at times, maybe not them, but have been part of the problem. And we're not really getting the real communication or getting the communities of the disadvantaged groups involved into this entire conversation.
Absolutely. And fundamentally, community work or community organizing is about enabling people who've experienced oppression to speak for themselves, to find their own voices, It might sound like a cliche, but it really is about enabling other people to speak up, and closing our own mouths at times and saying, no, this is not my struggle. I'm supporting these people, but actually they need to speak for themselves and they need to be heard,
Yeah. Interesting. Thank you so much, John. It was a very interesting conversation. Stay tuned till next month for another session with one of the experts. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you.